Hey there, it is me, Brett Fish. Welcome to episode 39 of Race With Me. And because we're this far in the series, it's time for us to take things up a notch and suggest that if you are serious about dealing with anti racism, for some of you, this might require moving. So this is quite an important one, and it's probably an aspect that we've tackled to some degree in other videos as we work towards this one. We're now on video 39. We have covered a lot of topics, and if you've made it this far, you probably are taking this thing seriously. You probably are really on an anti-racism journey, trying to do whatever you can do to get better, to be better, to do better. And so this is something that I feel is key. And it might start in terms of smaller things. So the idea is moving out of all white spaces. So if your gym or if your church or if your sports group, sports team are majority white, even your work, then a suggestion would be to do what you can do to start finding spaces that are more diverse, that are more inclusive, where people from all races belong there. And an example is that there's an area right near where we live called Bergfleet. And if you grew up in Bergfleet as a young white child, there is every probability that the only people of color in your life, you could almost go your whole life where the only people of color that you come across are people that are in service to you. And so your neighbors are likely white, the teachers at your school are likely white, and most of your schoolmates are probably white, but the person who clears away your trash is a person of color. The person who packs your groceries at the store is a person of color. The person who cleans your house and looks after your garden is a person of color. And so without being taught anything, without anyone having to say a word, you could grow up with this mentality or this mindset that people of color are there to serve you. Because that's your experience. It's the only thing you've ever experienced. And so for people living in areas like that, some of the easiest moves are the smaller ones. Go to another gym, move to another church or place of faith, move to a different sports club. Some of those start to have a bit of a cost attached and become a bit of a harder thing. But if you are committed to the work of anti-racism, then one of the things you have to do is get out of a white bubble. Because if you're only ever spending time with white people, then your thinking is not going to change from a white supremacy kind of thinking, from a white is better, white is right, white is the norm or the standard kind of thinking. And so we need to make sure that we are in spaces where people have equal footing. People of color are just colleagues and friends and neighbors. And one of the key things is if you are serious about this and you're wanting to impact your family and your community and the country, then one of the things to consider is actually moving. And if you're in a space where you're not moving now, but you're going to be moving in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, when the question of moving comes up, to make sure that this is something that you think about. And think about it like this. During apartheid, geography was something that was used specifically to separate and divide. And so white people were given a lot of the best or better spaces. People of color were moved out of spaces to accommodate white people. Black people were pushed to the edges, to the margins, further away, most travel, least access to the cities. And then in many spaces, colored and Indian people were actually put in between white and black as a kind of buffer zone to kind of keep white people distant from black people. And so because geography was used so much in creating apartheid and creating division and creating these mindsets of superiority, inferiority, then it makes sense that geography is going to have to be a huge part of turning this thing over, of changing the story. And so there are still communities all around South Africa, less and less of them, but there are still communities that are typically all white or majority white. And so if you are serious about this anti-racism thing, one thing to consider is actually just making a move. So not even waiting until when you were going to move, but is getting intentional. If you live in a white community, what do we need to do to live in a space where our neighbors will not look like us, where we are more likely to connect with and meet with people that don't look like us in the places where we shop and do sport and practice our faith and things like that. And so this is where it starts to have a cost. This is where it starts to get real. This is where we start to ask ourselves, how serious are we about this stuff? And if we're not serious about making a move, if we are content to stay in our white bubbles or white majority bubbles, then things aren't going to change. We can't expect them to change. We will not think differently until we are sitting with people as equals and engaging with people as neighbors, as friends. And so consider that to work on your anti-racism, it may require one or many movements. And start thinking about where are the places that you might need to be moving from, and where are some places where you might be needing to move into.